This fireside chat was recorded live at AI House on January 21st with Jason Thane, CEO of GenUI. In this section, Making It Real Without Overbuilding, the conversation shifts from diagnosis to execution. Jason breaks down how founders can move a prototype towards production without over-engineering or thinking like a large enterprise too early. We explore what parts of a vibe-coded product are often safe to keep, what usually tends to be rebuilt, and the minimum standards required to responsibly call something production ready. This is about making progress with intention, without throwing everything away or slowing yourself down unnecessarily. So I'm glad you brought up simplicity, because this next section, section 2, is I'm titling it Making It Real Without Overbuilding. I think a lot of founders overbuild. They get excited, and now they can because they've got Claude Code. And so right. I want to talk a little bit about which kinds of prototypes, like which parts are safe to keep, what don't you want to throw away? That's one part. And then how should solo founders think about over-engineering? Like from your perspective, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And can you also teach a little bit about architecture? Simple. I don't want to go too technical, but if you just think from a software developer's standpoint, what does that mean to kind of architect the big solution and be thinking about that before you start just diving in?
Yeah, so I think if you've done things well, you don't really need to throw anything away, and you shouldn't. But there's a natural drift as you move fast and you create prototypes to incur technical debt. And ideally, a prototype should be the product, but the thinnest slice of it that's able to go prove the hypothesis. And once you prove that, you get that signal, even if the signal's not what you wanted, you're in business. You're alive. You can iterate in that and refine it, and you know where to go next. So I think that it's not common that people should throw things away, but the over-engineering question, it's related to this notion of like feature creep in an MVP. You should keep an MVP as simple as possible, but over-engineering is a related issue where you might want to build the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is probably built on an acre of foundation, and so are you going to build a foundation that's an acre, or can you build just the center of it? And if it's a cathedral, right, you just build the foundation for the altar because that's the most important part. But keeping in mind that you want to build this gigantic building over time. So you have the vision, you know where it's going to go, and you're not making any decisions that conflict with the long-term vision. But you don't need to, architect the world to do it.
I see a lot of people trying to prompt their way to an architecture in their vibe coding projects at the beginning with, a few sentences that kind of lay the framework for how to think about it, whether it's you don't do this or think simply about this, but they're trying to prompt Claude Code or Bolt or Lovable to either complicate it less or think more simply about it. So can you give some tips to the audience about how to go into a vibe coding project to keep things kind of simple? From a business standpoint, they might know what their idea is, but then behind the scenes, they're not reading the code and they don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and these AIs will really happily run kind of amok in if you ask for an architecture, they might give you that, acre of foundation to build the Taj Mahal. They will, because that's how they're oriented. But you want to understand what you're doing and why, and how it's going to manifest at later phases. Fortunately, I think we have a lot of tools at our disposal today, particularly like the cloud platforms for scalability, that if you adopt a few of the right notions at the beginning, like being event-based, or maybe you're serverless, or maybe you plan to use the cloud to scale in a certain way, that you don't really have to do a lot of work up front to get those right ideas in place. So I would be wary of any AI that sort of runs off and is going to work on architecture for a huge cycle. It really should be, what are the ideas and values that are going to allow this thing to scale and to be maintainable and to be flexible in the future? We don't have to implement all of those right now, but let's agree on what they are. Put them in the README. A great tip for vibing with AI is to create a good README and tell the AI to read it. Sometimes I've created a README and the AI didn't read it. And then I said, go read the README and let's do this again. But if you've got it written down and you know what those principles are, and you make sure that the AI is aware of that as well, you can still move in small steps, not, sort of architect the universe, but you can be headed in the right direction.
How many people in this room, when they vibe code, create a README? Okay, good. So more than half. For those of people that didn't raise their hands, will you double down and flesh that out a little bit? What does that file look like? How are you structuring that?
Yeah, prior to like AI-driven development, or ADD, as some people call it, our teams were creating these READMEs just for the other humans on the team, right? And so it should just be the same kind of README. You want somebody who's new to the project to be able to splash down, understand the priorities of the project, the design decisions that have been made so far, and those that will inform the future. It should just be a great overview of what you're trying to do and what decisions you've made along the way.
So you can start there. I'm sure you can get ChatGPT to help you write a README, something that seems familiar to other developers. And so that's probably a good place to start, is have your business ideas, your main prototype, see how far you get with that, turn that into a README, and iterate as you go.
Yeah, and you can tell, you can prompt to ask me the questions you need to ask in order to write a good README, right? Because if you just ask for a README, you'll get something pretty boilerplate. But if you prompt to, let's have a conversation first, let's flesh out the details of what this project is and where it's going in conversation. At the end of that, you're going to write the README, and I'm going to edit it. I think that's a healthy process.
Talk about what production ready means. Like when you are working on a project pre-vibe coding, let's just say, and you knew that you had all the pieces in place to put this into production. What is the minimum that you need to have in order for that to happen?
Yeah, that answer is going to vary depending on the product, of course. But I can say in general, it's going to be less than you think. You don't need as much as you think, because you shouldn't be addressing the whole world. You shouldn't be going to global market immediately. You really want to run an experiment that's limited in scope in order to inform you and to inform the product, inform your next iterations. For that reason, we typically advise that people really limit their audience in initial releases. So you're going to production, but it is with a specific group, a specific community, or specifically limited. Think about when Facebook launched, it was only like Ivy League schools, and then they opened it up to more colleges, and finally to the general public. That's the kind of a staged rollout that you want to have. And because of that, it takes pressure off of the need to make things completely robust. It just lowers the risk profile of all of it. But more importantly, it makes your experiment more pure, more signal, less noise.
Yeah. What's an example? Like, let's just take some of the mobile applications that you've done when you've rolled them out. You knew they were going to go live in the App Store for everyone, but you were taking it slow. What size of those groups were they? How did you do it? And what were some of the things that you didn't put in there that you knew you were going to have to later?
Yeah. One in particular that's a good example that's happening right now is it's kind of a dating app that's rolling out to just one specific college in Texas. It's vibed and works pretty well. Like, it's a good MVP candidate, not quite an MVP, but it's going to generate some signal. There are a million features that the founder wants to put in it that we could think of that certainly are inevitable. It's obvious to everybody that they're going to be there. But, the core features are what really matters. And like, if there were more features in the app right now, it would pollute the signal. And does that core connection feature kind of
when you sprint with this founder, are you the one, or is your team the one that is trying to make sure that some of those features, get pushed off into the product roadmap? How does that relationship work?
Every founder we have ever worked with has wanted to put more in the MVP than should be in there. I mean, it's just such a natural tendency. And because you have to hold two totally conflicting ideas in your mind at the same time. You have this powerful vision that you're passionate about, that you can see in detail, the moon, the stars, and the sun. You want to build those because that's the future. That's great. At the same time, you have to limit yourself, hold yourself back, and say, what is the next hypothesis I need to test? We're just going to focus on that. Quite a bit of self-restraint is required, I think.